Makingascene.org brings you compression in context. Why soloing tracks is killing your mix. Okay, so let's get right into it. There is one specific tool, one button in your DAW, that might just be the secret villain behind all of your mix frustrations. And believe me, it is hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, you heard me, the solo button. I know it sounds a little dramatic, but for so many indie artists working from home, this one tiny little feature, it's the starting point for mixes that they just don't translate. You think you're fixing a track, but what you're really doing is breaking the song.
And this is the part that drives everyone crazy, right? You solo the vocal, you dial in that compressor, and it sounds incredible. It's smooth, it's polished, it sounds totally professional. Then you unsolo it, and bam, the whole song just shrinks, the vocal feels kind of pasted on top. So what is going on here?
Well, it's a psychological trap, honestly. The moment you hit that solo button, you completely change the question your brain is trying to answer. You literally stop mixing the song and you start polishing a single sound in a vacuum.
This right here, this gets to the absolute heart of it. It's all about the mindset. When a track is soloed, our brains immediately start asking, does this sound impressive all by itself? We chase that huge acoustic guitar, that super fat bass. But in the mix, the only question that matters is, does this part actually serve the song? And a lot of the time, a part that sounds perfect in isolation is actually way less useful when it's back in the full arrangement.
To really get why this is such a problem, we got to remember what a compressor is actually doing. It's not just some technical volume knob. Think of it more like a relationship tool. It changes how a sound behaves next to every single other sound in the song. Trying to judge it in isolation? It's like trying to choreograph a ballet by just watching one dancer stand perfectly still. It makes no sense.
So here's the absolute bottom line. Mixing in context isn't just, a nice to have or a good idea. It is the entire job. That's it. Every single decision has to be made with the full picture, the full song in mind.
And when we forget that one simple rule, we fall into some pretty classic traps. So let's just walk through the 5 most common mistakes that happen when you try to compress a track in solo. First up, you overcompress. Of course you do. In solo, every little transient, every peak on a vocal or a snare, it feels like this huge problem that you have to squash. But in the context of the full mix, a lot of those so-called problem peaks are exactly what gives the track definition. It's what helps it cut through all the other noise. Number 2, and we've all done this, we add way too much makeup gain. That's that volume boost you put on after the compression. It's an old audio trick because our brains are just wired to think louder is better. So you compress the track, you crank up the gain, and you think, wow, I improved it, when all you really did was make it louder and usually a lot flatter and less musical.
Third, you end up destroying the transients. That initial crack of a snare or the pluck of a bass string. When you solo a track, that initial attack can sound really aggressive, so you set your compressor to just flatten it. But when you put it back in the mix, you realize you've just sawed off the very edge that it needed to even be heard.
Okay, number 4 is huge. You stop hearing masking. So you might be compressing a vocal really heavily because it feels buried. But maybe the problem was never the vocal's dynamics. Maybe the real issue is that the guitars or the cymbals are living in the exact same frequency space, just totally covering it up. You can't hear that relationship in solo. No way.
And finally, number 5, you forget that music is all about movement and emotion. A song needs that contrast. A whispered verse shouldn't feel as dense as a screamed chorus. When you compress in solo, you're always chasing this uniformity, and you end up just ironing out all the dynamics that make a performance feel human and real.
All right, so that's the problem. It's a big one. But let's talk about the solution. It all comes down to a disciplined, context-first workflow that keeps the song, not the individual track, at the center of every single decision.
So here's a much better way to go about it. First, step 1, start with a static mix. Before you even think about a compressor, just get your basic levels and panning right. Get the foundation solid. Then, step 2, ask yourself why you're reaching for that compressor. Don't just slap one on every track. Only add it if a part isn't doing its job in the song. Step 3, when you do grab that compressor, set it up while the full track is playing. Hear it in context. Now this next one is absolutely crucial. Step 4, level match your before and after. Make sure the compressed version isn't louder, so you can tell if you're actually improving the sound or just being fooled by volume again. Step 5, remember, automation is your best friend. A lot of the time, just turning up a single word or phrase is a way better fix than squashing the entire performance. And finally, step 6,
take breaks. Your ears get tired, and tired ears make terrible decisions, and they absolutely love overcompression.
So what should you actually be listening for? Well, for vocals, it's about lyric clarity and emotional connection in the full mix. For the bass, it's all about the groove, the pocket with the kick drum, not just making sure all the notes are the same volume. And for something like an acoustic guitar, it's about providing rhythmic support, not just sounding massive all by itself. See, every part has a specific job to do.
Now, all the modern AI tools from companies like Sonable and Isotope, they can be incredibly helpful here, for sure. They can give you a fantastic starting point and way faster than doing it by hand. But think of them as your intern, not your taste. Let them do the grunt work, the initial setup. Then you unsolo that track and use your own ears to decide if it truly serves the song.
And let's just zoom out for a second, because for the modern indie artist, this isn't just some techie audio decision, it's a business decision. You're the artist, the producer, the mixer, and the marketer. Every choice you make has a ripple effect on your career.
And this slide shows you exactly how it's all connected. A great mix that connects emotionally, well, that gives your song more replay value. That builds listener trust, and that trust is what leads to saves and shares, which is what turns casual listeners into actual fans. You know, the people who buy your merch and come to your shows. It all starts with a mix that serves the song.
So please, always remember this. The goal isn't to create a mix that's going to impress other engineers with how technically perfect it is. The goal, the only goal, is to create a mix that helps your song connect with and move other human beings. That is the real job. So I'm going to leave you with this question to think about the next time you sit down to mix. Are you just polishing a collection of isolated sounds? Or are you shaping a conversation between all the parts, where every single voice has a purpose and actually contributes to the story? Make sure you check out the other great articles and resources on makingascene.org, the place the indie artist goes to build the new music industry.